Oh, new voice. Right, I'd like to call the meeting of the Shorewood Plan Commission to order at 6:31. All commissioners are present except for Commissioner Holtz, and who I think will be joining us. So we can just note in the minutes when he arrives. Item 2, approval of February 24th, 2026 Plan Commission meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Post, seconded by Commissioner Klein. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the minutes are approved as presented. Item 3, introduction to a possible ordinance amendment related to vision setbacks as defined in 535-10. So I will, procedurally, we usually introduce, well, actually, it's just written that it's an introduction, so I don't really need to describe that. But I'll hand it over to Director Griepentrag, but at which he will, summarize what's been provided to us in our packet, and then we can have discussion from there. But hopefully everybody's been able to review prior to the meeting.
Yep. Thank you, President McKeag. So actually, this potential ordinance amendment has been discussed, I think, perhaps for 10 or 15 years internally. And so when I arrived, I agreed that it was a bit outdated, but it just never rose to the level of attention in terms of getting an update made. So last year, within the bike ped update in 2025, it was identified as a short-term recommendation to take a look at it and see whether or not there was appetite to make it more implementable, because as currently drafted, it rarely ever qualifies because it's currently written to only apply to intersections that are not controlled. And so we don't have many of them. If any, I know of, like, I think Prospect and Beverly recently came up as an uncontrolled intersection, but there are very few and far between. It's also drafted from the street center line, which is difficult to administer, measure, implement, whatever the words are. And it's silent on driveways, alleys, and other intersections where, vision of pedestrians is important in the community. So once again, it came up with respect to the recommendations of last year's bike ped plan update. And so in your packet is the current definition. Also included is a proposed definition. That definition has been worked on by internal staff and then confirmed with the village engineer. And it was provided to the Parks and Public Spaces Committee back in January, just because they were interested in implementing that as one of the short-term recommendations of the plan, like I said. So they did receive this in January. We received no further comments on it. The village engineer, once again, has reviewed and approved it. So the proposed language is in here. It's code language. It's not, super narrative to read, but we do believe it matches what we expect it to be with respect to how to implement it. And then also in your packet, I don't have page numbers because my PDF maker wasn't working when we did the packet, but there is an illustration that shows generally what this would relate to. And so it'd be 25 feet off of generally perpendicular intersections of a street, and then 10 feet off of alleys and driveways. And so a majority of things that get proposed or installed are fine because these measurements don't impact lot lines necessarily, but there are unique circumstances, particularly on corner properties where driveways might come off of buildings or street or buildings or alleys in a less than standard way. So when we receive fence permits, things of that nature, right now we're forced to approve them, knowing that we probably are perhaps creating obstructions to that sidewalk. So as President McKeag, I think, mentioned, this is being introduced to us tonight. The Plan Commission is the recommending body for any changes to the zoning chapter where this is located. And so I'd be happy to answer either questions tonight or moving forward to bring them back to you. We cannot make a recommendation until a subsequent meeting. And then at that point, if there is a recommendation, we would need to schedule a public hearing in front of the village board, which requires 2 notices and a public hearing. So we're looking at, probably 2 to 3 months at a minimum to have this discussed, but we as staff are comfortable or at least happy with where it's at. So once again, if you have questions tonight or moving forward, I'd be happy to provide, perhaps more visuals if that's helpful. But in a nutshell, that's where we are coming at this from.
Thank you very much. I'd like to open it up for discussion. Yes.
Being a cyclist and a avid pedestrian, I'm not interested in getting hit by a car. Have there been incidents, or are you just trying to get ahead of the curve as a planner should?
No, I know there have been incidents in the village. To your point, we have a lot of pedestrian and bicycle activity. Whether or not those incidents were caused by specific obstructions, I can't comment on that. But whether this is reactive or proactive, I definitely think it's something that needs to be addressed because as it's been, discussed and or tried to be implemented, there's always that actually we can't apply that to the code. So like I said, when a fence permit comes in and it meets the current definition because there's nothing to stop it, we have to approve it because the code has nothing that we can deny it on. So I don't know if other people have experiences with respect to knowing incidences or not, but yeah, it definitely, unfortunately, does happen.
Thank you.
Yeah, certainly see it. Experience it. A typical fence is how high?
4 feet, typically in a front or in a street side yard, it could be up as high as 6.
This 3 foot.
Correct. So you'd have to push your fence back, to
Ah.
not be within that area if it does in fact infringe on that. Or it is also written to say that your fence could be 50% opaque, so more see-through. So yeah, it'd be a matter of making it, wrought iron or picket so that you can see through it, or relocating it outside of that triangular area,
Or keeping it at 3 feet.
or keeping it at 3 feet, which kind of a awkward height for a fence, but it's an option.
Right.
Not standard, right? 3 feet.
Correct.
Right, so you'd be,
And when property elevation change?
Correct. So I need to remind myself of where it's measured from, the surface of the roadway. I guess it's not difficult to read. So a triangular area shall be maintained clear of obstructions at the intersections of streets, alleys, and driveways. Unless accepted, no building or structure of any kind shall be allowed between a height of 3 to 10 feet above the surface of the roadway, nor shall any plant material be allowed which obscures safe vision of the intersection. Streetlights, traffic signs, and utility poles shall be accepted, and fencing may only be permitted if not more than 50% opaque. And then the following two subsections relate to the measurement. So it would be from the roadway. So yes, if there's additional elevation added, then you're looking at a 2-foot fence or something, which once again, I think the general goal or recommendation would be to keep things out of that area and not, not create awkward exceptions, for a 1-foot fence or something of that nature. And like I said, I'd be happy to provide perhaps, and I tried to come up with some actual real world examples. I know of one that exists that I could, show next week, but it would amount to the village saying that you're not allowed to put a fence in that part of your yard, which, I mean, we do say no to things. That's part of it. And this would be justified based on the visibility of the sidewalk.
I'll ask the obvious question. So what if we made the requirement 4 feet instead of 3 feet? Then we'd be out of alignment with like the safety records regulation for.
Yeah, so I did mention it as well, but we did research or, other communities, and I forget which one it was, but one of the communities had a large write-up in their packet of comparing, their community to various other ones. I probably have it in my packet here. So yeah, 3 foot was the standard. I think that's based on, the height of someone sitting in a car and being able to see things, but probably not completely necessary. But yes, this was referenced. Looks like, Janesville, Green Bay, La Crosse, Racine, Beloit, Brookfield, Eau Claire, Fond du Lac, Kenosha, Manitowoc, Wausau, Wauwatosa, and West Dallas were part of someone's analysis, which is largely what ours was based on as well.
And they're all 3 feet?
I believe so. I'd have to, double check on some of this stuff. The main thing was, okay, so this one's 30 inches, 36, 36, 30, 30, 30, 36, 36, 36, 3 feet, 42 inches, no definition, no definition. So there is some wiggle room, but I believe our current definition also is 3 feet. So we maintain that. Maybe not. I'd have to double check on that. Oh yeah. So the current definition is no structure of any kind shall be permitted which exceeds a height of 3 feet above the elevation. So we're not looking to change that dimension. We're looking to change, we're adding the intersections of driveways, alleys to apply that 3-foot parameter.
Comment. I'm thinking of an example that a new regulation would limit the property owner's privacy of their patio. So when we're creating new regulations, just for us to be making sure that we're balanced and addressing something that's a real problem versus, creating new regulations that then are having real implications for people's properties, especially because we have such small lots. So I just want to make sure that we're following. Thank you for sharing what other municipalities are doing, because that's where my mind goes first.
Yeah, and if it's in here, you said you think it's based on like the height of somebody in a car or maybe the height of a child. I don't know. But is that documented somewhere in a guide? Oh.
One, not to deflect, but we did confirm with the village engineer, and they're the ones that most typically would deal with these types of technical questions. So I can ask them if they know where that's based off of. Once again, happy to bring information back to you. I'll make a note of that.
Mm-hmm. And so it would just be moving that 10 feet back from where it currently is. So someone's fence, if they wanted to put a fence up, they'd lose 10 feet of fenced area.
Perhaps not a full 10 feet because you have right of way that would be, part of that as well. But yeah, it's a policy decision in terms of what the priority is. Someone's right to enclose their backyard or, block pedestrians from being visible when a car's backing out of a driveway. So it's a policy choice of priorities.
Mm-hmm.
Is this connected to the public greenways project at all?
It is not. It was a recommendation of the bike ped plan, which that project was as well, but not directly connected, no.
Other comments, initial thoughts?
You bring up the diagram so we can all, and I think we're all looking at it.
I actually, unfortunately, don't think I can because I'm logged into.
Fair enough.
This is not my computer. Let me see. I don't know. I don't have access to the network with this. I'm just set up for use of Zoom, unfortunately. Oh, it's in the packet, though.
Yeah, it's okay. I just noticed that the way that the triangles were displayed for those in the perimeter of the lot line is different than the intersection, and that looked different from other references to a vision triangle. And I was curious if that was intentional or just an inconsistency.
If we have the time, I'm happy to bring it up, but I also, if you want to restate that, I might not have fully gotten it. Oh, that's the trustee.
Totally made me just know. Pardon the pun. On the page of the
For the purpose of recording, unfortunately, I can't share the screen, but we're looking at the diagram in the packet. So I have that up on a large screen. Momentarily, that will be up on the large screen. So yeah, could you reiterate or restate the
yeah,
issue?
just curious. In the bottom right-hand corner, the vision triangle doesn't seem to be granted the way that I guess expected. In the other areas, it's trying to create a triangle corner. This one seems to not follow the pattern of the examples. Am I making sense? And then if you just put, you'll see.
So if I am so the one on the street corner is the goal is to open the corner for a vehicle on the street, and so it's based on the intersection of the perpendicular intersection of the curb Whereas the one on the alley and the driveway is based primarily on the person exiting those areas. And so the triangle is based off of the sidewalk or alley or driveway. Is that answer the question? Or maybe I'm not getting it yet. It's definitely not to scale. It's
which is, I think, a thing that we should bucket to scale. But all the other examples I've seen online, put the triangle kind of like equal distance. You could put 4 triangles into an intersection, and it kind of makes more visual sense on how you're structuring this. Like,
so it's drawn from the street center line.
there's a couple versions like that. There are a couple other versions. I was just like, I'm trying to visualize if I'm a car, what vision is supposed to be made better by that particular implement.
The utility cabinet oftentimes gets placed in a location like that, and this would allow the village to say you can't put your We Energies cabinet there or your street, light cabinet there. This is showing a relatively large parkway and a lot line 4 feet off the sidewalk, perhaps, but there are parkways that are more narrow and lot lines that are perhaps 1 feet from the sidewalk. And so there are instances, once again, where we don't have a standard development pattern in the village just because it happened over decades. And so this lot might not be representative of most or of certain intersections, but if you have other examples that you'd like me to reference, I'd be happy to look at them if you want to share them to me. To the point of it being on the street center line, that's something that in the field would require engineering equipment to measure. It would require staff to be in the street with, vests on, et cetera. It's not practical for us to be doing that in terms of measuring.
The street anyway for the 3 feet.
We'd be at the curb. So the proposed definition measures things from the curb.
Okay. Send you my reference.
Sure. Yep. Happy to look at them.
To your question, Josh, the way I'm imagining it is if I'm going, let's say that this is like cardinal directions correct. If I'm going south on that street, then I can see through to the street that's going east-west, and then the same going the other way. Am I missing something?
You asking me or? Oh no, so I imagine you're driving up on the representation here on the.
Now, if I'm coming south.
Correct. This triangle would be opening the vision for a car traveling south and looking west.
They're right.
But yes, there would be 4 triangles at each of the other intersections.
Oh, I appreciate the dialogue. Thank you.
And I'm happy there. It's odd that every community has a different standard for this because it seems like something that is more standard. And so just over the years, they've been developed differently. And I didn't copy and paste this. I wrote it myself. And so this is going to be unique too when someone else looks at it and goes, what were they thinking? But so I'm happy to make sure that what we end up recommending or discussing is understood and it makes sense. There's no time sensitivity to this other than it would be nice to have it on the books accurately. So yeah, I'm happy to look at other examples. I have Middleton, I know, as well over here. And I think West Dallas and Wauwatosa, I have a pile. Once again, I made this probably over the holiday break to share with the bike ped committee. So it's kind of been a while in my mind too. So I'm not opposed to, rehashing anything.
Does anybody else have initial thoughts or requests for more information for next time?
Looking for.
If you have one.
I think this is great. Help. Couple things, car safety, pedestrian. Visual of the corners.
Again, a Commissioner Flynn post, that actually is part of the Greenway project where we might daylight intersections with bump outs or temporary bump outs or things. So yeah, this relates to, behind the curb, but the Greenway part would relate to in the street. And President McKeag asked me before the meeting as well if this, conflicts with any parking regulations. Parking regulations are in its own part of the chapter, and they say you can't park X feet from these particular intersections. people do. It's the reality of people not realizing that's the rule. And so the Greenway project will hopefully, reconfirm or daylight intersections as best as it can.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's all connected.
I'll just share an opinion that walkability is so key in our village that so anything that we can do to support pedestrians and bicycle safety, I think is essential. So my thought is just about the comparison to other municipalities, but I think this is a positive.
Yeah, I remember it being a really big issue when I was first on the board, or maybe it was when I was still on Parks Commission. And for some reason, I just think there was so much going on, we couldn't really look at it. But yeah, you have the documentation that it's.
Yeah, there's old drafts and folders that when I came here, I know it had started or paused or maybe it was internal. I don't know, but it has been discussed. And I think it'd be great to.
Yeah, move it forward.
Yeah.
So any requests for additional information or for next, you had a suggestion, Josh? What else?
We see a couple examples of how it could be applied. I'm not asking for 1,000.
Yeah.
More
Yep.
than one.
Yep.
And
The scale.
perhaps even along with that, types of fencing or just things just to help us visualize.
Thank you.
50% opaque. Love to see what that looks like.
I know, exactly.
So we just had a fence submitted and it was on graph paper. So it was actually kind of easy to do it because which squares will or will not be covered. And it was a picket fence that was 60% not see-through. And so I told them, because they actually had requested it in the right of way, they had requested a special privilege. I said I would be recommending denial based on that conflict. And so they're going back to the drawing board. But had they wanted that plan simply on their property line, I could not have said no to it.
Exactly.
But because they were requesting it in the right of way where we have extra review authority, yeah, I have reviewed one recently that I think perhaps they thought was pretty see-through, but at the end of the day, it was not.
Interesting. Yeah, whole new area of things I've never thought about. I mean, I've definitely thought about the sight lines, but not, things, materials and things like that. I don't know how hard or easy this would be, but if we have a sense of how many, pre-existing structures there are, or some examples of things that would be.
I can definitely give you examples because there's plenty of, hedges that are right up to the sidewalk that I think I could easily measure and show that moving forward, these would not be allowed to be planted in that fashion. So I'm happy to provide those as well.
How does that? That would only work if it was in an area that they had to get permit.
Correct. Or if it's newly planted. So we have the benefit of street view now to, if it wasn't there last year and you planted it, because you don't have to get permits to plant landscaping, obviously. But we would have the authority or the ability to say the code did not allow you to plant that there. We don't have staff or anything to be chasing that down. But if it's identified as an issue or a complaint, that would be something that we could follow up with.
Yeah, you could do a complaint-based
Correct.
review. So yeah, I just remembered the lilac bushes at the end of our alley were crazy. Yeah. Okay.
But once again, if they were pre-existing before this code, they're not, like I said in the amendment, they'd be considered non-conforming existing. But if that plant died and they wanted to replace it, they technically would not be able to. And so we just would have to do our best to keep an eye on that and use the tools that we have, which largely are street view at this point.
Okay. All right. Anything else? All right. Then we can move on to the next issue. So this is discussion relating to Wisconsin Act 173, Truth in Planning. And I know that Commissioner Flynn Post requested that we take a look at it. So between the two of you, would love to hear.
I don't have much more of an update other than what's in your packet. This relates to relatively new legislation that was passed in April and does not become effective until January 1st of 2028. So municipalities are given, this year and a half to review it. I provided the perspective of the League of Municipalities. That was the most, I think, authoritative review that I've seen to date. There have been other, people that have weighed in on things, but I just provided their perspective as well as the full act if you're into reading, how things are amended and created or whatnot. But so yeah, according to the league, they believe there's four primary parts of this legislation. And so the first one relates to needing to have minimum and maximum densities in your future land use element. As I mentioned in the red text of my comments, we have maximum densities in our categories, but not minimum. It wouldn't be difficult to add those minimums, but it is something that we would need to clean up to make ourselves compliant. Anytime you update your comprehensive plan, you are required to do various steps, including a public participation plan. And so it's not as, as I don't want to say simple, but it's not as simple as making an ordinance change. You have to do more than that because it is a pretty powerful document in the state's mind. So that's part one. Part two essentially relates to then making sure that your zoning allows for those densities. And so the one category that I think would need to be discussed specifically would be our R1 through R6 districts are all in our lower density residential, but R1 through R5 do not allow duplexes. And so as you, I think, have been told, and you will find out later tonight, the village did recently adopt ADU legislation. So in those lower density districts, you are now allowed to have your primary use, single unit dwelling, as well as an ADU. So you're looking at 2 units on that lot. And then in the R6, you're also allowed to have the 3rd unit. So we would have zoning districts that might not fully match our land use categories. And so the question would be, do we make an additional land use category, or do we consolidate or update our zoning classifications? And so that would be, once again, a bigger conversation. Or there's probably other options that I'm not fully aware of or thinking about right now. So in my mind, in my understanding of this, those are the 2 big things that we'll need to be looking at, is updating our comprehensive plan to make sure our land use category has all the elements it needs, and then reviewing that for consistency with how we've actually zoned parcels. Because should someone apply then for, a rezone of a parcel in a low density area that the comp plan says is acceptable, but zoning says not, we would have to allow it. So we want to make sure that everything's clear with respect to that. Part 3 relates to some changes to updates the TIF language, not necessarily relevant to the comp plan or zoning, but I've included it for your reference. And then part 4, just for everyone's reference too, is they've updated the TIF legislation to allow communities to extend the districts for 2 years to gather money for affordable housing. So as you're probably familiar, the village has done that with TID 1. We captured 1 year of increment to set aside funds for the development of affordable housing. We do have 3 TIDs that I believe are expected to close in the next 2 years. And so when the CDA and board take on that discussion with respect to closing the TID or keeping it open, that is a change since the last time, but not necessarily plan commission purview, although obviously it does have impacts to land use. So the 2 main things that I'm seeing are the part 1 and part 2, the land use classifications and the zoning. We have until 2028 to do it. I've also mentioned that the village board did favorably thumbs up the initiative that you had submitted to a 5-year comprehensive plan review. And so to me, I think logically this could be wrapped into that. So when we review the land use element, we take that on as well. So I'd be curious of your thoughts as if that makes sense to you. If it does, we could start that, and go through chapter by chapter or full chunks if we want to. But when we get to that land use element part, that would definitely need to be addressed.
Thank you. Is there anything you want to add, Kate?
Just where I landed with this was similar to what Director Griepentrag had just outlined, just that it's a great opportunity for us to update the comprehensive plan and do any reconciliation with the zoning code, which is something we had talked about at the last meeting. So that's timely if we want to do a 5-year review. So that's excellent. I think that it's interesting to see at the state level this package of bills come through, because it's really a huge part of an effort, a bipartisan effort to address affordable housing and the affordable housing crisis that we're experiencing nationwide and also statewide. And so really it's intended to place limits on NIMBYism within municipalities that need affordable housing. And it creates a path forward for developers that did not exist previously, as we've seen in many examples throughout our area. But I also would like us to explore a little bit more of the particulars as how this applies to Shorewood and our work as a commission, because it does bring into question what are the limitations that it places on our commission in terms of what we can and cannot do and the comprehensive plan being the major tool. So if we feel confident that the comprehensive plan has had enough public engagement and review throughout the years, then we can say, okay, great, we're in a good place and we can add those density numbers. But if we need to take a look at re-engaging the community, that could be an opportunity for us to do that. So my mind is always thinking about smart growth for Shorewood. So, there's the status quo on one end of the spectrum and stagnation as a village, and then the opposite end of the spectrum being experimentation that could lead to unintended consequences. So for us to forge a path forward that is strategic is something that I'd like to see us pursue.
Wonderful. Any other comments or questions? Yes.
Couple for Bart, take me to school, TIF, tax and rental financing.
Correct, yes.
Okay, between now and the deadline, we amend the comp plan, the code, lies. Is there someone at the state that reviews our work?
To my knowledge, not specifically. It relates to whether or not we would withstand a lawsuit for doing something that someone disagreed with. So I don't submit things and get like a stamp that says, yes, you've done it right. They just don't have the staff, I don't believe, to do that. So as is pretty typical, they'll enact legislation, will enforce and implement it. And if we get challenged and a court, Board of Appeals or a court says, that's not how we would interpret it, we would be, subject to, issues. But yeah, there's no one to my knowledge that ever, certifies that you've done it correctly. We would obviously have the village attorney, review everything that we've done, and we would hope that they would have that level of review on it as well. Yeah, he's not here tonight, but for sure he'd be involved with any amendment to the comprehensive plan or the zoning code.
That is a question that I had in reviewing this analysis, and I really appreciate everything that you put into this. But one of the points that jumps out at me is in part 2, where it talks about the local government does not meet existing housing demand or forecasted housing demand within the next 5 years. So, what does that mean for Shorewood with our comprehensive plan, and who enforces, implements that as the village attorney?
Yes. So we do have those numbers in our plan. I didn't include it, and I could link it, but I believe those numbers do come from the Department of Administration. The 40-year project or the 20-year projection does, and I think then you base that off the 5 years of growth. But yeah, we would just need to confirm that those numbers in our mind are accurate and attainable. And if for some reason they aren't, we would have to challenge the Department of Administration, is my memory on how that process works. But yeah, so I think as it's written, we would not be allowed to reject things if that was one of the things that someone qualified for. So a lot of just confirming what our numbers are, so that when an application comes our way, we're confident that we can approve or deny or whatever it is that the code requires.
Great. All right. Anything else?
No, so I heard some head nods or whatnot, but I will plan on preparing this within the 5-year update to the plan. So perhaps next time I come, I will have more information on how I think this could work into that. It might make sense for us to have those discussions first, and then identify what public engagement we need, because it's possible we might need or want engagement on other topics. And so I think it makes sense in my mind to do that 5-year review, have that overview, have that, as part of this conversation. We do have a 1.5 years to do it, but that time goes quick. And so I don't want to wait. So yeah, next time we have a meeting, I'll for sure have this back on the agenda in some fashion.
I think that's great. I'm really excited for the guidance.
And just to clarify, will the 5-year review be completed in 2026 still?
I don't know that it'll be completed in 2026, but it would definitely be started in 2026. It was submitted as a 2027 initiative, but I think it makes sense, just based on the timeliness of this, that we start that work. And I can confirm with the village manager that it's fine to add it to my work plan. But yeah, I don't think it'd be finished in 2026, but it could be. It also, we'll see where it goes.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Update on Housing Opportunities Initiative.
So I did send an email, I believe, last month, perhaps, when I mentioned we wouldn't have a meeting, but the ordinances that we recommended did pass at the village board level. So the village now does allow accessory dwelling units. We've updated the definition of housing, and we now allow bedrooms and basements. I haven't heard much about the last two in terms of bedrooms and basements or the housing definition. That doesn't surprise me that I haven't heard much about it. I will say when the ADUs passed, we did have, a handful of people that contacted us that were excited about it. I believe some people have engaged architects to start thinking about it, but we have not received any applications to date.
We just got a model though for a large basement. There's 2 bedrooms in the basement.
So yeah, and those are things that don't come to my desk necessarily. Our plan reviewer in the building inspection department would see it. So yeah, thanks for that update, Crystal. I'm sure that people, are excited about that one as well, but I just don't see those things. The ADUs, I have heard conversations about from people trying to make things work. And I've asked everyone, I said, if you look into it and for some reason there's a roadblock that we didn't anticipate or that you can tell us, please let me know so that I can report back. And so if I hear those things, I'll pass them along as well. But to date, no applications, which is not surprising.
Thank you. Any future agenda items that you're anticipating? Oh, and wait a minute. Sorry. Remember how we were talking about duplex guidelines? It seems like the 173 would help us with that.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's kind of nice. Are you anticipating any applications or future items for Plan Commission?
None that I'm aware of. I rarely get warning of the application before it comes my way. So yeah, if it comes, I'll be sure to let you know what's on the agenda.
All right. Anything to add? Hearing none, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
It's everyone. Any objections? We stand adjourned at 7:08. I did hear from John Holtz. It slipped